Welcome, Efrat, and I'm glad that you could join us today. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I wanted to start off with mentioning your book up front, because that is one of the reasons that I did invite you on and want to kind of have a discussion about that. It's called The Promises That We Made, which is really interesting because I feel like that is something that we want to focus on going forward, as conscious beings, in the energy and reason vibration. And then because I feel that's an important message for, conscious parenting, um, it does help in transforming, our lives. And I feel like it starts at home. And so it's kind of like the term inside out, right? Because our parents, and we're our one of the first contacts after the doctors and nurses, of course, that our kids come into the world and they're exposed to. And so if we are unconscious parents, then we're kind of ingraining and teaching our kids the same things. So how do you feel about that? Is that correct in saying that, or?
Yeah. I think that a lot of current modalities or perspective in society, and and we're spread around the world. It's an international, so it's a bit different, but undermines the power of parents. You need to talk to experts. The doctor knows best. Read those books. Even my book, I did my best to empower parents and not take their power, because eventually each child, as a soul for their own choices, chose specific parents, and that's a being it trusted most. So everything starts in the house, in that all those little interactions, and we undermine those interactions and our time with our children and the guidance we offer them, and we embrace so many do's and don'ts of society. We have to read our children all those classics we grew up on. Some of them are full of ignorance and shouldn't be continuously shared, and we don't ask questions. We don't ask questions as parents, and we must ask parents. And my perspective brings in the spiritual journey, that shared spiritual journey of parents and children. But before that, even before we open up to this expanded consciousness that we all share and we're all invited to grow into, children chose specific parents. That means those parents know best. If those parents are confused, as we all are confused, because this is a confusing world, that's what we offer our kids. As soon as we give that, we open that door for trying. And I capture that, I think, in the third promise in the book, the promise we made, in the promise of motion. As soon as we even try those little efforts we make, we already communicate energetically to our kids. We're moving, we're opening up, we're trying to raise our consciousness. I'm trying to raise my vibration to you and not pulling you down, because we don't go anywhere in order to be pulled down. Everywhere we go in our choices, we hope the environment, the whatever we go to study, the people we spend our time with, the food we eat, we hope it would pull us up when we're conscious, when we are aware of our choices. And the same is true for children. They want us to be pulled up to them, not us pull them down to where we are. So it is a confusing world, but as soon as we open up, something already shifts, because that sends a message. Okay, we're working on it. Maybe we're not as high in our vibration as you are. That new beings that just joined us, and the beings that are joining us are, wow. But we're trying, and we're in that process, and that means they can stay aligned to who they are a bit longer while we find our way to them. So yes, everything starts in the homes, and awareness and expanding our consciousness is not separated for our homes from our children, from raising them, from the people around us in general, people in so many we have like this spiritual experiences, and there are various spiritual experiences. I find all as equally important, but it doesn't happen to an individual. It's always an invitation that ripples to everyone around us. And that means when we have I had a near-death experience as was when my daughters were babies, that means that's for my whole family. It wasn't just for me. And as I've learned, it's for much more. It's rippling to my community, the book, people around the world. So yes to everything you said, and sorry if I talk too much.
Oh, that's okay. No problem. So yeah, with the book, there's 3 promises. Did you want to share them on here, what they were, or kind of touch on that, or want to save that for your book?
Yeah, no, sure. Of course, I want people to read the book, but I'm happy to share about them. It's first, if I take a step back, to my understanding, when a soul chooses the parents it's going to be born to, so it chooses a lot of elements. It's the genes, it's the personality, it's the environment, it's the expression of genes, it's a lifestyle. There's so many elements, and those elements are weaved in out of both personal and universal wishes. The personal, you wish to, for example, I chose to come to a very academic family, and I understand it today from where I am that I needed to consciously choose to expand my consciousness, to open my heart to awareness, to energy, to become an energy healer. All those aspects, I needed to consciously choose them for various reasons that come from my soul journey. So it's a choice. It's a personal choice. We choose. I chose a father that could give me my redhead, or so all those personal, little details. I chose to be born in a specific region in the world. So those are specifics. Those are personal promises, and those differ for different families. What I focused on was downloads that came about the universal, those shared promises, pieces of our journey that every child, every soul, regardless where it comes from, regardless of the aims of its journey, wishes for us to fulfill. And they are so basic, but somehow we still, as in the way we grow our children and we raise them, we take it away from them. So the first promise is truth. Just allowing children to stay aligned with their truths. Mm-hmm. As adults, so many of us, something happens to us along our journey, and then we start coming back to our truth. And we go through so many processes, sometimes easier processes, sometimes more complex and demanding processes to find out, who are we? What are we doing here? What makes us happy? What makes us joyful from within? What makes us whole? Start healing the wounds we carried and that were awakened along our lives. And basically, we could hand this opportunity to just stay aligned, have our kids stay aligned from the beginning, if we don't take away their truths. And in my book, I go into a lot of examples and details, both for my family, my journey, because I did this, I went through the same mistakes of how we can offer kids that truth. There's so many aspects in our lives that we are just not aware of, because that's how things are done. And as soon as we start asking questions about him and checking every little detail, we notice them, and then we can help them stay more aligned to who they are. So that's the first promise in brief. Second promise talks about attentiveness. We all know how to listen. We are born knowing how to listen. Listen to our body talk and tell us, I'm hungry, I want to go to sleep, I want to be hugged right now. Listen to our energy communicate with us. Listen to all the signs we posted on our path, and notice them and follow our own guidance instead of doing what the experts know best. That's like outside guidance. We choose parents we trusted would guide us on how to navigate human life in these times that we are living. But we also have it always in us. Few weeks after little ones are born, we already take away their ability to be attentive. We take babies into so many activities we interfere in their gazing, in their knowing, in their individual play. There's so many things we do as a society, as a modern Western society, I should say, that take away their ability to listen, an ability they are born with. So again, the second promise is our promise for them that we will do what we can to nurture. If we need to learn how to be attentive as parents, all we need to do with our babies, our little ones, is nurture an abilities they already have. And that's being attentive to the first promise, their own truths, their own knowing what is right for them. So that's the second, again, briefly. The third talks about, it was given the name, the motion of love. And that is because, in my near-death experience, I guess the biggest reminder I received was that I am made out of love. My daughters are made out of love. We are all, that's the essence that we're made of. And that's our journey back to it. And as parents, to little ones, to little, independent humans, but really huge, evolved souls and beings, we promise to do our best to find our path, fulfill the promises we made to ourselves for this journey, so that we can become the potential they chose us for. They trust us. They come knowing that we have our wounds and our stuff and our confusion, but they trust us. They trust us to become what we can become. And the only way for us to create the conditions they need to fulfill their journey, both personal wishes and those universal ones, is by being who we are, because we keep our blueprint a secret from ourselves. They keep their blueprint a secret from themselves. There is no way for us to know the whole spectrum of what we plan for this journey, what we came here to be. We can get a glimpse and get to know based on what makes us happy and come alive. But we have no idea what's planned. So the only way for us to provide those conditions that they need to become who they are is making sure we are aligned to who we are, thus creating those conditions that have them stay aligned to who they are. And that a lot of suffering and confusion and mistakes are just, they go away, and you can concentrate on what you came here to experience and what you came here to offer your family, one another, and the world. So that piece of motion, it is so powerful to see. I work with a lot of families and spiritually aware children, and it's amazing to see that choice a parent makes. And when it's those parents, it's even more powerful. That communication to those little children, stay aligned. It's okay. Maybe we're confused, but we're working on it. And it opens such a beautiful door for beautiful souls to stay aligned to who they are, and then grow into becoming conscious co-creators. Now, we're talking about 3 promises, but I will share with you that there's a second book coming up in January with 6 additional promises. I was a bit like, what, 6 additional ones? We just finished with 3. What are you guys, my luminous friends, what are you talking about? But eventually those 9 promises together are create a roadmap for parents. What are the foundations we need to go through in order for us to anchor and grow into the beautiful beings that we each are? Because we see in the world so many beautiful beings that grew up confused. And when you are confused, if you don't use your powers, and maybe it's not such a big deal. But when you came with powers and you use them not in positive ways, it has horrible ripples on so many people. So, maybe I'm naive. I'm often being told I'm naive, but I'm a dreamer. And I know the power of dreaming a world into being. And in this roadmap of foundations, I know we can create a different world by making sure kids grow to become ethical, conscious, creative co-creators, creating for the good of all. So in the promise we made, I showed 3 promises, but there is universal promises coming up in January with additional promises. So it's like a broader perspective than what we thought we'd be talking about. I'm a bit surprised about that as well, but getting into it. Yeah.
So do you ever think, and I mean, you kind of already touched on it, do you think with conscious parenting that we would ever be able to get past the, where we're shutting, our kids down, by putting them into public situations like schools, things like that? Because I think it reminds me of the whole, what comes first, the chicken or the egg scenario, right? So do we become conscious parents first, or how can we break that cycle of, doing that to our kids? Do we have to wake up as parents? Or because I know even our divine kids that are coming in now more so than ever, or more awakened and more higher intelligence frequency vibrations, and they have that awakening gene within them already. It's the potential to be, from my understanding, because I also channel too as well, and I bring in information. But how do you see that unfolding? Do you think if like conscious parenting will be able to help us get rid of that, where we are no longer putting our kids at stake? And I think Sadhguru kind of mentioned it too, kind of similar to your message, where we're not really raising our kids, we're cultivating our kids. Right. But if we are unconscious ourselves, then, we can only do what we can do. And so are we ever going to bypass that?
I don't know if, are we ever going to bypass that? I believe we can. Where does it begin? I think it's different for each family. The journey of parents and children is always mutual. So as soon as the egg and the sperm meet, there is already something transpiring, often even before. Mm-hmm. And is it about that high vibration coming in and starting to inform the mom and inviting her? And as moms, we know that when we're pregnant, our intuition about what's right and what's wrong is so much more prominent and leading us, and we listen to it. Does it start with that vibration that joins us? Does it start with us consciously becoming aware because of things that happened to us before we conceived? I don't think it really matters. I think for some families it starts this way, for other families it starts that way. What really matters is that we take the invitations we are receiving with two hands. So if we think of an example of a kid that is really struggling in school because they feel all the energy in the room, there's so much going on in a classroom, mm-hmm. So much going on energetically, even if it's really, really polite and all the kids are really behaving and everything is going well, energetically, it's a whole different scenario when we observe the energy of a classroom. So if there is a child struggling and their parents are stuck in that perspective that a child cannot go into life without school, that there is no chance that they can homeschool them, and it's not possible in all countries. But I'm very much pro homeschooling, but I know it's not always possible. Or even explore, what are there other alternative systems in their area that they can open to? That's when we fail. That's when we fail. Now, there is lack of information for parents to understand that what their kids are dealing with, especially those sensitive New Earth children. Not all New Earth children are sensitive, but many of them are spiritually aware children which come with a whole different energetic capacity. The systems that we have are not aligned to what they need. Mm-hmm. So there can be this really amazing teacher in that classroom that sees energy, that feels energy, and she can handle the energy. And many teachers do that, often not knowing that they're doing it. But at the same time, most schools are not. So it goes back to, do we take the invitation or not? what I find it's really sad because it's babies are born and we think organic and we buy this and this and we make sure the paint of the wall will be lead free and and then somehow they're 2 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old, and we wished we go back into that systematic, limited thinking that controlled us our whole life and is slowly finding its way back because we have woundings of belonging and we want to be like everyone else. So we let our kids eat all those junk food that we know is not going to be healthy for the food, it doesn't make any effect immediately, but for their future, we already know we're not eating those stuff, but we give it to our kids because we want them to be like everyone else. So I think, I'm sure you're aware of it as you channel information, that our whole concept of what does it mean to belong when you come with expanded consciousness and energy and high vibration, it's a whole different meaning. But we're still dancing within that, the old, the new, the old, the new, the old, the new. I see it also with a lot of spiritually aware families that are already choosing and doing so much beautiful work to heal their family wounding, what sits on their family lines, to be attentive to their kids, offering them so many opportunities, and still they fall back. We're humans. I fall back. It happens to me as well. But I think that one by one, family by family, shifts are taking place. I recently, with my community, we collected books that are that we find them to be spiritual. Now, the definition of what is spiritual, we can debate on that. That's a whole different big discussion. And what is a spiritual book? Every book that resembles and offers us the processes of nature is in my perspective, spiritual. But what was amazing was to see that when my girls were little and I looked for picture books that offered various spiritual experiences, concepts, ideas, it was really hard to find those books. I received a lot of recommendations from my community, and we included some of them in a long list, not all of them. Some of those books I wouldn't read because I like books to be really delicate and they were really, really colorful, but other parents and kids do like them. But and it's just a spiritual, because we're different, and that's okay. But the point is that just having so many books available is a reflection that there are so many children who need this exactly variety of books and everything around us. Picture books are our human way of offering our kids what they need to learn about being human. So, and there are so many books. That means there's so many kids like that. And there's so many moms who are creating those books for their kids. And so one by one, family by family, people that do what I do are all over the world. And I think we're slowly, each of us, contributing to a quantum of shift that is happening also within families, that understanding that spirituality and awareness and raising our vibration is not about when we become adults, independent adults. It's everywhere in our lives, every aspect, our homes, what type of decorations we bring in to raise our vibration. What do we eat? What is information we feed ourselves and others with? We're not separated. It's all together. It doesn't mean we're one, but it's happening also in the families. So what is a chicken? What is the egg? I think it's different for each family, but something definitely is going on and is happening. And I have that dream, and I know it is possible.
Awesome. Yeah, I can see how it is taking places in different areas. So like some kids are staying awake, and then there's people like within my situation where my near-death experience came after I had my kids, and so I can see within myself the different type of parenting that I do now from this place than I was before, because I was also kind of shut down. I was never fully shut down because I would still have intuitive abilities and things like that growing up. But I still had that veil, from my parents because of the experience that my soul wanted to take on. And then when it was done, there was the near-death experience and the integration of everything. But yeah, I can see the difference between, the parenting before and after the effect of the near-death experience. So, yeah, it's really an interesting topic. Where do you start? Because I used to think about that. I'm like, where do you start though? How do you implement it? Do you change the school systems? Do you change the churches? Or do you just start at home and cultivate it in ourselves? So that way we're not affected by the outside world. Do you know what I mean? And so, because then we can go anywhere and not be affected by it if we have the right cultivation by conscious parenting. But then it brings me back to that loop where, like, okay, well, if your parents are unconscious, then how can you do that for your children to make it that way? Right? Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of what posed that question. But thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Brian.
think that it's definitely when we awake, you had a near-death experience when you had your kids. I had a near-death experience after I had my girls. I know I'm a different parent than I would have been without the near-death experience. Very different. But that's part of the journey, and we do that journey with our kids. Our kids knew that something might happen, and that we would, and they trusted us to show up to this really huge invitation offered by a near-death experience, which is a process you need to integrate, and you need to find the language, and but it's, as you just said, when if I'll say it in other words, when we're aligned, when we know what our truth is, we offer that same invitation to our kids. So we reflect that, be aligned, and then they grow, and maybe they have to go to the system, and they have the school, and they have to go through all kinds of stages, but the stronger their inner center, inner luminous soul center, the greater the chances are that their levels of confusion along their journey will be lower, and that their way back to their center will be easier. It's about language. It's about how you guide them. By now, I have a lot of teens that I've worked with since childhood, and some of them get confused on the way, but they still know that when they're really, something is really seriously going on and they kind of lost it, they send me a text. They send me a text and they say, okay, I'm not centered. Help me center. Mm-hmm. So we have our tools, and I don't always help. I often give it back to them because they have the tools, and I will just hold space for them to find their center, because I want it to be something they can do for themselves, not to be dependent on myself or anybody else. But it's a reflection that when you have that center, you can find your way back to it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And so you mentioned with this new book coming up, so are you channeling this information, or how are you receiving the information?
I'm not sure if I relate to the word channeling, because I don't write it word by word. I don't receive like the concrete messages. I receive a lot of images and ideas, and then I mulch it in my language and my understanding. I find it really important, at least for me in my writing. I want to be behind every word and every idea and the energy I embed in the book, or in an article, or when I'm showing up and we're having this conversation. So I avoid that channeling of information as it is given, although I know exactly who are my guides and where this information is coming from. But the ideas are definitely not mine. They're downloaded. They're understanding that I download. So I download it, and I apply it, and I bring real human life examples and how it applies within human life, because they're brilliant, those luminous ones, but sometimes they don't understand how things apply here in human, dense, confused environments. So I do that integration. I think that's my role in the writing, to integrate it and make it applicable and clear, I could download a channeled information, but that would be in really high language, and that wouldn't be my language. And I want to stand behind what I'm sharing, but the ideas are not mine. No. So I
That
don't know
makes
if that's
sense.
like,
Yeah, and the average reader in contemplation of certain topics and things, sometimes when information comes in, it is higher, and there's a lot of misunderstanding for people when they're trying to understand it or read it. I notice that in my own writings, people don't understand where I'm coming from. I understand it because I'm getting the information, but I need to learn how to relay it to other people in different understanding for them, um, so they can understand it and integrate it. So
yeah, and I think that's our process, and that's our role as humans, because if the luminous ones, I'm intentionally using like a broad term, we're able to give this information to everyone just as it is, as frequency. It's not even words, it's frequency, it's energy. So that wouldn't need people like you or I or other people to take the information and mulch it and integrate it and bring it down in specific human ways. And there wouldn't be so many of us, because each one of us brings it down in slightly different perspective and different words and a different way of expression. And there are readers or listeners that need those various alternatives, because one relates to one and another relates to another. So it's that process of being a mediator, I guess, for healing, for words, for whatever we're asked to show up for.
I love that. Yeah. Would you want to share your near-death experience and how this kind of all came about? Because you mentioned your near-death experience came after having kids. So like, what was life before, and then your near-death experience, and then after that?
Sure. I always wonder where I start. So in regard to our conversation, I will start 5 days before my near-death experience, which is a piece I also share in my book. My twins were 13 months old, and my toddler was a little over 3. And I had a mother's circle. We had a mother's circle here, and I invited them into our apartment where we lived, and it was a circle of gratitude for me. Gratitude for all the help, for this beautiful community we were part of, and for me to go through a challenging year of having twins and a little one, and during that circle, each mom shared, and I had all kinds of plans of what I'm going to say to express my gratitude, and all I managed to whisper was, I want to be their mother. And then 5 days later, the near-death experience happened. My twins were at home with my mom, and my husband was home as well. And I drove my toddler to her daycare, which is just like a few villages away here, and was about to drive uphill to the city where I was teaching. I wasn't teaching a lot. I come from an academic background. I have a Ph.D. in organizational and social psychology. And at that time I was home with the twins, so I wasn't teaching a lot, but I was teaching in a few academic institutes, and I was going to teach. And as I came out of the village, and it's like I couldn't go because there was a very specific car that needed to bump into me. It wasn't, it was orchestrated. And that boom came. I'm saying it's orchestrated because I'll jump in the story, but later on, I met the woman who bumped into me, who lost control over her car and bumped into me. And I felt such deep, profound love for this woman that I knew that there is no other way but for us that we know each other as souls. And that she gifted me. She took responsibility for a horrible situation. She gifted me with such a serious kick, so that I would do and shift and show up to what I came here to show up. But that's a huge gift to give another soul. and I love her dearly, and we have a great communication, and we're kind of friends now, and it all evolved like not in expected ways, but I share my story with her in the Divine Synchronicity book. It's like an anthology. I share my story with her, how we met by coincidence afterwards and everything. So she hit me, and I was immediately out of my body, immediately floating in spaces of luminous light and love. I don't remember the tunnel, which a lot of people talk about. It really happened fast. I learned later that it's that in car crashes, in things that happen very, very fast, you often don't feel those experiences, but that's like a piece of understanding that came later. And at first I was floating forward, and I was seeing additional beings floating forwards, not in any organized way, but just, I feel like to the sides and in front of me and behind me. And all of that time, a lot of luminosity coming in, really relaxed, really calm. Everything was just serene. You had a near-death experience, you know how that feels. It's a feeling that we don't really have human words to express. And at some point, those other beings, which later, again, this is a later understanding, were beings that were crossing over, that were in their ending of the human journey, were able to float forward. But I wasn't able to float forward. It wasn't a scene barrier, but I was not able to float forward. Other beings were coming to welcome them, beings that looked, some of them had a human look, some of them had a non-human look. We're embracing those beings that were coming over. And I was just there, unable to move forward, nobody coming towards me, didn't care a bit. I was just, it was so serene and beautiful. And they were continuously. At some point, a being came towards me. In my book, and also when I talk about the near-death experience, I share that I felt this being as if it was my grandfather. I leave the question open: was it my grandfather, or was it higher guidance that took the frequency and the appearance of my grandfather, so that I would be able to communicate with it? Because I know this frequency today very well. And it was just a communication with love. The communication is not verbal. It's just communication of energy being floating from one to another. It was a really beautiful embrace. I felt safe and calm, and in a way slowly felt the love. And I talked to you, and I feel it in myself. It's very present within my physical. The experience is still present. Almost 15 years later, in my physical body. It's very, very, very present. At that stage, I was invited to stand with my grandfather on I call it a white shimmering balcony. There was no one around, and it was a beautiful space, and there was nothing around us. And I'm never sure if to say that I was floating above Earth, or that the Earth was shifting below this balcony. I was witnessing a lot of human scenes. Not all of them, but most of them related to interactions between parents and children. A lot of happy moments, a lot of confused moments. And I was just absorbing. I didn't understand where it's taking me. I don't have the understanding as I have today about that it has to do with my life past, at least for this time, the writing, the type of messages that I am to bring. But I was getting a greater and greater and greater perspective of what's possible, and about making choices, and about how easy it is to make confused choices. And I was seeing a lot. It was, it felt like days, felt like a few days of watching. There's so much information that flew, and I was just absorbing, and then at some point I needed to go back. It was a clear message that was not negotiable. can I stay in this beautiful place? I like it here. It wasn't a possibility. I was just giving the message that you have to go back now. And I was already floating backwards, falling into my really fatally injured body, bleeding, painful, all of that, or just boom. And then I came in and out, like in outer body experiences. I was coming in and out of my body. It wasn't possible to be in such pain. But that was already on my way to the hospital. So that's my near-death experience. And I'll add that it took me a while to integrate it, to understand what happened, what are the messages, what is the information, and then to be in that space that I was more fearful of not exploring further than exploring further and understanding, what do I have to do with this information, and that it's not just for me. Like any near-death experience, it's never just for us.
Right. Yeah. And I know for a lot of people, it does take a while to integrate. And also for myself, because for me to even start talking about it was about like 10 years and just integrating. It was like one experience after the other. And then finally, I've got to the point where I was guided to start talking about it, sharing it, and doing things like that. But did you have a life review in addition to all that?
No, I didn't have a life review. Did you?
I did. Yeah. So I had a life review, and then also they were showing me why I chose to come in, and then gave me the opportunity to come back if I wanted to. So I did, so I can
Chose
finish
to
my
come back
journey.
to us. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yep, definitely. It took me a while to stop kicking my butt, keep kicking myself in the butt for coming back, because I was like, oh my God, what did I do? Because it was so beautiful on the other side. It's so amazing. The energy, the vibration, the love, everything. And I was like, oh boy. Because I even woke up the next morning and I looked at the sale and I was like, oh no, what did I do? But, it's what happened. So here I am. But
Yeah, but I think, I've learned it's not the same. But when we are aligned to who we are, we have those moments of grace that feel heaven on earth, that we feel the love and we feel the joy, and we're walking and evolving and in this deep, profound expansion, which is not as in other dimensions, but very close to it. Just imagine a world where everybody just walks aligned and ripples that to one another. It's then we would be living heaven on earth. And again, I do think that's possible for humanity if it's find its way back. When I wouldn't say if, when it finds its way back to its heart.
mhm. I feel that too. I feel like at some point we will. When that's going to happen, I don't know, but we're all in transition towards that. So it is beautiful. So
Yes.
I kind of don't, beat myself up anymore on it, because I'm doing, what I can do while I'm here. So
I think that's all of us can do. But as long as we are indeed showing up and doing our best to do what we came here to do, because we need the contribution of each and every one.
yeah, definitely. I know we talk about being parents, right? Mother, father, our parents, but I feel like we're all parenting. Do you know what I mean? Like everybody is parenting from their best space that they can be in, no matter, even if they're outside of our home, like the teachers, the kind of like what they say, it takes a village to raise a child, right? So in my understanding now that I'm awakened, it's like everybody's parenting, right? To the best of their ability at their level that they're at in their own awareness. And then, so what is your take on that? Does that make sense to you as far as like parenting? Because it's not only for me, just the parents and mother and father, but everybody as a community, because we're all whole in one.
Yeah, so to my understanding, a child, the soul chooses its parents. Sometimes it ends with the parents. Sometimes it's about choosing the biology, the genes of one of the parents, but having more of a soul choice to be guided by one of those parents. But then children choose often their siblings who came before them, grandparents, other family members, or other significant adults that are around the family. So we always have beyond our own. Then we have those friends, those soul friends that we hope we will meet, and maybe they have had a different choice of parents, and those are guiding themselves, and that meets and integrates and affects us as well. Then there is, and I want to address it very delicately. I think that each human being walking awakened, walking aligned to who they are, walking with clean energetics, raising their vibration, is like a lighthouse for so many beautiful souls. So even if your parents are still confused, you may meet, I like to give the example of librarians. Librarians are such important, significant adults in so many children's lives. And it's somebody that sees you, somebody that communicates with you, somebody that reflects possibilities very quietly, often without words. But it can also be that that person cleaning the street, but that is walking with really high vibration and is just saying hi, sometimes without any physical appearance of saying hi, just that hi, that luminous hi. And that allows those children who don't receive that nutrition in their homes, that communication, that nurturing, that cultivation of stay aligned, that it's like a luminous reflection of it's possible. And these walk around us everywhere. There's so many beautiful beings that not necessarily have kids. They are not necessarily working as teachers or as ones who are guiding little ones or teens, but they're around, and they're an energetic reflection. I'm saying everything with cautious because ideally we would all see and understand that we continuously ripple energetically, and everywhere we go, we communicate something without even awareness. But then when we're talking about teacher and significant adults, we need, I invite those I guide to be careful in assuming that a child chose them or not. Maybe that child chose them, but when we have the parents, we know the child chose them, not just biological parents, but also all the other types of parents we have today. There's so many beautiful ways to have a family. But when there's somebody that comes outside and has a perspective of, I'm that child's teacher, so I have permission to look at their energy field. I have permission to give them all kinds of guidance because I'm their teacher. Well, possibly that child chose you and hoped to be part of that group that would be guided by you, and possibly not. So we need to be really careful in the permission we give ourselves once we show up as guides, as teachers, not to our own children, not to our own community, not beyond our very clear community. So it's, and still we should show up with high vibration, very clear, open, flowing energy, work on ourselves, take responsibility and own, so that we can show up as our essence, because and we would reflect that essence to the others, little ones or adults around us. But we need to be careful in assuming who we have when we have a concrete role and when we don't, because we don't always know. So it's high integrity is really, really crucial, and humbleness also in where we show up and how we're guided to work. I find it it's related and not related, but it's coming up to me, so I'll say it. often when parents approach me and want me to work with their kids, so I bring it back to the parents, because the kids did not choose me. They did not choose me. Those parents could have just have found another guide that is doing the same work that I'm doing, or in a different approach, to work with their kids. I work with the kids only after I worked with the parents and did all I could with the parents through them, guiding them on how to guide their kids, because their kids chose them. They did not choose me. And maybe that kid was hoping that their parent would meet me at some point, specifically me and not anybody else. I don't know that, so I'm not going to assume that. And I think that's true for many roles. Any role of anybody working with children really, really empower the parents. They are the ones the child chose, so they're the ones that need to, everything that can go through them needs to go through them. So, and it goes back to what we talked at the beginning about so many pieces of our systems disempowering parents. Parents need to take and own their power. Parents need to own their power. Your children chose you. My daughters chose me. And that means you can do what you need to do for your kid. It's true for each and every one.
I think that's very powerful and awesome. Because yeah, we do get into those situations where people feel like they have rights over others. And if we didn't choose that as our part of our journey, you know, it's like people trying to impose themselves on others. But as parents, coming from that, since we're on that topic, as a parent, if our child did sign up to have a certain experience that we don't want to see them go through, like how would a parent consciously go through that, and allowing and just watching their child do that?
Oh, so many kids are so confused today, and we never know whether that confusion is something they asked to go through, or adopting social practices, because that's the type of confusion everybody else is going through at the time. So I would first begin and say that most kids did not choose to go through huge confusions. A few did. Okay, if you want to be helping others deal with drug addiction or alcohol addiction, you may go through that experience intentionally, so that you would then be able to grow from it and know from firsthand experience, because that's a completely different approach for helping than if you did not go through a firsthand experience. But most kids do not need to go through the vast confusion our modern Western society offers them. It's like it's part of the, it's like it has become part of their social initiation in many places, when most of them did not ask for it and don't need it for their journey. Yes, we do ask to go through challenging situations, but challenges are not fast confusion. That's two different things. And then it's parents. Let's say your kid is going through something. You want to be there for them. You want to make sure they always know you love them. That's all the conventional, you know, stuff that we communicate, and I stand behind most of it. But then there's also that piece where you can show up as a parent for yourself, because the more you do the work yourself, the more you become that essence you promised that child, that confused teen. Now you become more of that essence. That means that they have a reflection of that possible. They have a reflection of the promise you promised to them. They have a door open to returning, to finding their path. Now, everything we heal as parents, that means our kids don't have to heal it themselves, or they don't have to trigger us so that we would show up, because that's part of the mutual journey. Every piece that we work and we solve, we create a better environment for our kids to work out their stuff. So even if they're confused, let's say a kid is really, really confused, but they come to a home in which the energy is constantly being cleared and nourished. So part of those energies they collect and the confusion that is not theirs, it's just going to stay out the door because it cannot come in. And that's something that a parent has control over. No words being said, just keeping the energy of our homes really, really, really clear. And with high vibration, that means low vibrations have to stay out. They cannot come in. We already helped our kids. And I would add that that's true also for parents to adult children. They left the house, they went to college, they're living their life. Anything you do to heal on your family lines, on yourself, you're creating a cleaner table for them to work out their stuff. So we always have the power to help, even if they're not talking to us and they don't want to hear anything about it, and they're immersed in their confusion. We have so many tools to work around it and through ourselves. Is it going to save them? I know it helps many. Sometimes it's what makes the difference. Sometimes that kid needs to go through it, or they're too deep down. We're still going to reach out and do whatever we can. There's so many pieces that we can work through ourselves for our kids. Limiting beliefs that we carry, and perceptions, and emotional patterns, and soul stuff. It's like when you do shamanic work, and that's the type of tools I'm using, there's so much that you can cleanse and solve and resolve. And as you do that also for everyone around you, including your kids.
Awesome, beautiful. That totally resonated. Like my whole body was just like vibrating, like when you were talking about that topic. So that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. I think that'll be very helpful for a lot of people, who are going, because right now we're going through a lot of stuff, our kids, a lot of the awakening, we're experiencing a lot of things on a lot of different levels. So I think it's going to be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, we always have the power. People need to remember they have the power. That's part of healing, finding your power, owning your stuff, taking responsibility, and healing. And also remembering that you're whole as you are, because we're both. We carry those wounds and stuff that need to be healed. And we're also just beautiful beings, all of us. Beautiful. Even those very confused ones have that spark. So
thank you. Did you want to share where they can get your book and more information about you, and then when your next book will be available?
Oh, I would love that. Thank you. So my website, by my name, efratshokef.com. On my website, you can find articles, you can find information about my book, and a lot of free resources for parents. I have quite a few resources that people can explore and see what talks to them, and according to where they are, feel free to explore them. My book, The Promise We Made, can be found on Amazon and many other bookstores, and it can also be ordered in your local bookstores. I love local bookstores. You can just give them the names. They should be able to find it in the system and be able to order it for you. So it's not just Amazon and the big online stores. And my next book, Universal Promises, Foundations for Creating the Conditions Our Children Need to Thrive in Times of Transformation, I'm still practicing, will be available in January 2026. And I'm very excited about it because I think it makes the roadmap whole. So everything is on my website. And I'm available. You can email me with questions. I have my email on my website. I answer each and every one.
Perfect. So, thank you. Any last words that you would like to share with the audience?
Thank you for having me and for holding this high frequency and vibration for others. It's a true gift. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.